And welcome in everyone to this week's episode of Craze's Corner. Today we're going to be breaking down our top 10 consensus running back rankings. We have Zach from Ocean State and Jeff and Will from Media. So we got the four of us. We got our consensus top 10 fantasy football running backs. You want to make sure you stay tuned for that. But first, we have a few news stories to talk about. The biggest story of the day, Derwin James signed a 4-year, $76.4 million contract extension. That puts him as the highest paid safety in the NFL with over $19.1 million per year. He took over that spot from Minkah Fitzpatrick, who didn't hold it for very long. The next story is Cam Akers is dealing with a soft tissue injury. We don't know too much more than that, but that is concerning coming from a guy who's just recovering from an Achilles injury last season. We need Cam Akers to be 100% for the season for sure. Otherwise, the injuries could just bring him down the entire season, making Darrell Henderson just that more involved if he plays, because he's also dealing with some sort of soft tissue injury as well. So this Rams backfield is currently looking like a mess until we get some more information. And the third news story is Antonio Gibson has been taking snaps on the punt team. He's been taking snaps with the third team offense. He struggled with fumbles throughout the beginning of his career, and he fumbled last week I think it was his second touch last week against the Panthers. After that, they pulled him out of the game and put him back in with the second team. And then this week he's been practicing, as I said, on the punt team and with the third team offense, as well as some first team as well. This is definitely a situation to monitor, as Antonio Gibson is currently going anywhere between the 4th and the 5th rounds in your fantasy football drafts. And if he's going to struggle with fumbles again, there's a really good chance after drafting Brian Robinson and bringing back J.D. McKissick that Antonio Gibson may be faded out of this offense. I want to know if you guys are taking a shot at Antonio Gibson this season. Currently, he's off my draft boards where he's going, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. Let us know using the Media app. The Media app is a virtual press conferencing app that allows you to host a virtual press conference from your phone. So pretty much from your phone, you can host a virtual press conference. You can share it to any social media platform as well as on the Media app. Definitely a great thing. There will be a new version dropping before the season. Jeff has been working really hard behind the scenes to get this all done, and I'm super excited for you guys to all be able to get your hands on it. So you make sure you stay tuned for that. You can check it out on the Google Play and the App Store. And now let's welcome in our guests, Zach, Will, and Jeff. Welcome in, guys.
Hey. What's happening?
What's going on?
You guys just as nervous about Antonio Gibson with all this news coming out about how the coaches are punishing him for all these fumbles?
I've always been nervous about it. Between fumbles and turf toe and hamstring, man, I had already said Brian Robinson's looking like the new number one in town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I took him and basically gave him a Baxter punt off the bridge from Anchorman, right off my rankings. Completely undraftable. Brian Robinson, gonna be a league winner. Mark it. You heard it here first.
Yeah, he definitely could be. I don't even know at what point I would entertain the offer of him. Like, what round would you be comfortable taking Gibson in? To me, I probably wouldn't be comfortable taking him until like that 7th or 8th round. But that seems crazy from a guy who finishes, at least as an RB2. So we'll have to see what Ron Rivera and this coaching staff does. Too many mouths to feed in that backfield, along with Carson Wentz at quarterback. So who really knows how good this offense in general is going to be? This could be a very, very bad offense. But let's get into some more positives. We're going to talk about our top 10 running backs this week. We have a lot of variety within these top 10 rankings. I was kind of surprised. Our number one running back was only ranked number one on one person's list. So that's something to monitor. And then, number one rankings, there's a guy ranked at 2 who's number one on someone's list. The guy ranked at 3 was number one on someone's list. And the guy ranked at 5 was number one on someone's list. So there's a lot of guys.
Who that is?
Yeah, you guys all know who that is, but we'll get to that after. But our number one running back, according to our consensus rankings, who Zach has as his number one running back, is Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor last year finished as the RB1 by far. He gets an improved quarterback who loves to check the ball down. We saw that last year with that guy in Atlanta, who we will not speak his name. He got lots of receptions out of the backfield. Taylor should see the same again this year. He saw a lot more targets with Phillip Rivers at quarterback, that old guy who really can't move around. I expect some of the same. Will, Jeff, and I all had him at 2 as opposed to 1. But Taylor should be good to see that targets. He's going to see those carries, and he's a freak athlete. So for me, I think he's a great pick at 1 or 2. He's probably safer than who I have at 1. But Zach, you have him at 1. So let me know, why do you think he's going to repeat as the number one running back, despite the fact that it's been a while since we've seen a RB1 repeat as the RB1?
Yep. I mean, it's just I'd be making an argument that doesn't make sense, or I'd just be pulling stuff out of the air kind of thing if I didn't. Just it's recency bias. It's his age. It's the offense that he plays on. It's having Matt Ryan there again. He did all that with Carson Wentz, and in this world, somehow still Matt Ryan is an upgrade over Carson Wentz. And I think also too that as far as you want to talk about, whatever side you fall on of, I want to be crazy risk just so I can be a league winner, so I go with this guy, or I want to be safe and not just blow my first round pick. I think Jonathan Taylor kind of fits right there in the middle for you. He's solid. No real injury history. I mean, his rookie season, he was RB6. So you're looking at a guy that's RB6, RB1 going into his third season. Look at the age of elite running backs. And out of those guys in that age group, he without a doubt has the easiest path to RB1.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the injuries are really a big thing currently throughout his career. He hasn't had them. Whereas opposed to pretty much everyone else that we're going to name on this list, except for 1 or 2 guys have struggled with injuries throughout their NFL career, and that's a common theme at the running back position. And as I said, to me, he's a safer option than who I have number 1. Just due to those injury factors, I think my guy will be a little more involved in his offense. But as I said, those injuries, I can see why Jonathan Taylor would be number 1. Jeff, what do you think about Jonathan Taylor? You have him at number 2. So let us know why you don't think he's going to be the RB1.
Well, I call him Derrick Henry light. So that's my thing.
Oh, spoiler. Foreshadow.
Foreshadow, right.
The only plus I think that he has over Derrick Henry is that, yes, he does catch the ball out of the backfield some as well. But, yeah, I would be happy with either one of those guys. To me, you don't lose with either one. I'm a Henry truther. But if I couldn't get him, I would take JT in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think that, Derrick Henry may not be, who I had at number 1. I would probably take Jonathan Taylor over Derrick Henry a lot, just due to the fact that Jonathan Taylor is 6 years younger, or 5 or 6 years younger than Derrick Henry. And in running back years, that's an entire career younger. So to me, I think that's a big separator between Jonathan Taylor and some of these other older guys. But Will, what do you think about Jonathan Taylor? You have him at 2. Do you think there's a chance he finishes at the RB1 again?
I don't know. I can see it, but I'm actually worried about Matt Ryan at quarterback. And so, it'll be interesting to see if he plays the whole year, and if there's back and forth with quarterbacks because of injuries. How does that affect the rhythm of the offense and all that? So honestly, it's the reason why I knocked him down from number 1 was I'm just not sure until I see it, and it come back to bite me. But I just want to see it. I want to see how the Colts really look the first couple of weeks and what their commitment is with Matt Ryan, and are they still so run dependent? Like they were near the end of the season. So it's kind of just a wait and see.
Yeah, if their offensive line stays healthy, Ryan should have time in the pocket theoretically to get the ball downfield. But if he starts getting pressure in his face and injuries happen along that offensive line, those targets are definitely going to be there for Jonathan Taylor because Matt Ryan is too old and, quite frankly, he's too smart to be taking unnecessary hits. So that's definitely something to look out for with Jonathan Taylor as opposed to our number 2 running back, Derrick Henry. So somehow made it to number 2 thanks to Jeff having him at 1. But, I think it's an interesting situation there. But, Jeff, you have him as your number 1 running back. Let us know why you think he's going to finish as the RB1.
As I said before, even though he's a little bit older, he's just built different. The whole defense knows what they're going to do. And he still, like a beast, rips through the defensive line and takes off. I don't think he's lost his step with his speed. You're looking at his workouts. A guy that is breaking down does not work out like he works out. And he has something to prove. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's all the talk about Jonathan Taylor, but he's got something to prove. And basically, we don't know what else they have. We don't know what Robert Woods is going to bring to the table. We don't know what Treylon Burks is going to bring to the table. What we do know is Derrick Henry is going to get the ball early and often, and he is going to produce with his carries. Matter of fact, look at last year between him and Jonathan Taylor. When he was playing, I think he was far and away pulling ahead of everybody as far as points and yards until he got that unfortunate break in his foot. And the reports are that break wasn't that bad. He was able to come back for playoffs, which tells you something about his durability and his ability to heal. He kind of reminds me like that time Adrian Peterson ended up coming back, But to me, he just seems like one of those guys that's just a stronger. I don't even know what to say, man. He's just built different. That's it. He is truly built different, man. Big, fast, not going to be stopped, and going to get the ball early and often. So that's why I always stick with King Henry.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Zach. You are the next highest on him at 2. Let's hear your thoughts on why you have Derrick Henry at 2 before Will and I jump in as we have Derrick Henry at 5. So, Zach, why do you think he's going to be the RB2?
Yep, that's wild. Yeah, I'm more on Jeff's side here. I'm closer to obviously Jeff with the ranking than 5. It's a little absurd, you guys. But no, and I mean in 8 games last season, he finished in standard leagues as the running back 14, and he played less than half the season. And in those games, he scored a touchdown in only 4 of those games. So he scored, one of those games like 3 touchdown game. But if you look at just what he can do with just like that small sample size, it's hard to say that he can't be the RB1, right? Because if you just extrapolate the rest of that season, he would have blown away any fantasy running back season ever. So yeah, this is the part of the rankings where it's kind of like wide receivers and quarterbacks, where the first couple guys you're like, yeah, I'd be totally fine with either one. So when you're kind of like splitting hairs, my opinion, with the top 3. So.
Yeah, so Zach's talking about his top 3, which is completely different from everyone else's top 3.
Wow.
So let's just, it is. It's surprising. I kind of thought we'd be more along a similar, train of thought with the top 3s, but there is a lot of differences. Okay. So we will see how that turns out. I'm going to talk before Will does here about Derrick Henry. I like Derrick Henry. I think he's by far the best player on this offense. The offensive line isn't what it was when he had his standard finish as the RB1. And in that season, he only finished as the PPR 3. So if we're talking a half point PPR, he finished as the RB2. The receptions really aren't going to be there for Derrick Henry in comparison to all these other options. That's something to keep in mind. His efficiency per touch has dropped each of the past 3 seasons. Derrick Henry is now 28. And that golden age where running backs really tend to fall off is 26, 27. Derrick Henry really didn't play his first year in the NFL. He only had 110 attempts. You take into the fact that he is a massive guy. That's definitely harder on his ankles, on his feet, and on his knees, but he is built. You take all that into account, and his fall off is going to happen soon. It's just whether or not it happens this season or next season. I think the departure of A.J. Brown is a negative all around for this Titans offense. That allows for him to have less touchdown opportunities. Zach said, as he said, he only had 4 touchdowns in his games last year. So he will have to, keep those insane attempt numbers up, as well as trying to get in the end zone as much as he can. But if he doesn't keep those numbers up and his efficiency drops again this season, he's still going to have probably top 5 for carries. But if he's not anywhere near, top 15 in efficiency per carry, that's a negative when you don't have that, reception work that all these other running backs have. Jonathan Taylor, Austin Ekeler, Najee Harris, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, all these other guys, even Aaron Jones, who get this work in the passing game. That's going to be a common denominator in all of these running backs that we have in our top rankings, is they're all involved in the passing game. And Derrick Henry, really, he can be involved, but that's not really what he's built himself out to be in this Titans offense, and that's not what they've shown that they want to use him as previously. It's all been about what he can do on the ground. So if his efficiency takes another step back this year, with the injury last season, something you got to keep in mind, I think he's risky. Could he pay off? Absolutely, because as I said, he's probably going to be top 5 in touches if he stays healthy. It's just what can he do with those touches and how many touchdowns can he score in an offense that, to me, I'm not projecting to be a top 10 offense anymore with A.J. Brown gone. Treylon Burks and Robert Woods, neither of them have really proven to me that they can be a true number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, especially Robert Woods coming off the ACL. Austin Hooper, not super worried about him anymore after he left Atlanta. He did really nothing in Cleveland. So I just think there's a lot of question marks on this offense. And Derrick Henry, he can have the touches. What he does with those touches is going to make or break his season. And I just don't think we will see that, PPR finish of 3 next season with all the receptions we've seen as targets continue to vacate. All of the stats show that those vacated targets go to the running backs, which helps all of these other guys we've named more than it does Derrick Henry. He's a great running back, one of the best in the NFL. He's, to me, the second best running back in the NFL behind, obviously who I have him behind. But that is for a later discussion. Will, what do you think about Derrick Henry?
I have him in my top 10. I have him in 5. He's 28, and I'm not sure what this offense is going to do. And I understand why Jeff likes him now, because Jeff referred to him as the beast. So this is some Marshawn Lynch displacement to Derrick Henry. But look, he's going to get his touches. They're going to try to run the game through him. But my concern is, what happens when the offense can't move the ball and they're down 14-0? Like, you look at their scores when he plays in the games, they may let up 31, but they were scoring 34. I'm not sure that offense can put up 30 this year. And if the defense, if they get down 14-0, are they really going to keep feeding Henry the ball? So that's my concerns. That's why I moved him down to 5, because I'm just not sure who the wide receiver 1 is. Who are they going to be able to have some type of attack that makes defenses respect the passing game? Because if I'm the first few weeks, I'm 8 in the box. And until a wide receiver shows me they can beat me, I'm selling out to stop Derrick Henry. And then I'm going to try to get up on them and get them out of their running game. And so we'll see. I mean, he could easily be running back 1 again, but if looking at who they are right now on the talent, and there's so many question marks at the wide receiver, that's going to affect the way the defenses play them. And it's going to change the way they're going to have to play.
Can I just say one more thing? We're focusing on the wide receivers of the Tennessee Titans. We act like A.J. Brown has been there for a long time. Derrick Henry was doing this when they had no wide receivers. Matter of fact, when A.J. Brown was there, he missed a whole bunch of the season. They didn't even have another wide receiver. Julio Jones was nowhere to be found, and this guy was still moving people and moving the ball. So that's why I'm not so concerned about the wide receivers. They find a way to get him the ball, and he moves people. The line will move him just enough. All he needs is a crease, and he does the rest of the work. So as long as Robert Woods can go ahead and be an underneath somewhat threat, We still don't know what Treylon Burks is going to bring. I think we're putting too much emphasis on the receivers. And we act like the Panthers got such a great
let's look at Derrick Henry's. Let's look at Derrick Henry's stats.
I'll defer.
But hold on. Let's look at Derrick Henry's stats. So 490 yards his first year, 744 his second year, 1,059 third year, fourth year 1,540, 2020 he had 2,027, and then last year he got hurt. Now I get it, Jeff. Like you said, well, he was doing it before that. Yeah, in 2018 he had 1,000 yards. That's not an RB1. He of his 6 years, he's had 2 years where he really put up big numbers. So I gotta ask, like, are we projecting on what he did, or are we projecting on what we see the Titans are, who they are right now?
He did not hit his stride, because if you look at that year, yeah, he might have reached 1,000 yards during the regular season, but we didn't look at what he did during the playoffs. And what he did during the playoffs,
yeah, it's his fantasy football.
This
is fantasy football. The playoffs don't matter. Week 18 doesn't matter.
But it started to carry over. That's what's
it's gonna be an extended episode
next year.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Okay.
Okay, so we're looking at Derrick Henry's 2020 season, right, Jeff, where he had his almost RB1 season. AJ Brown finished that year as the wide receiver 9. Right, so they had that ability. Ryan Tannehill was able to capitalize on the play action. The defenses had to worry about that. That was a big part of what he did. When A.J. Brown played at the beginning of last season, he was good. He had the defense's attention. Will said defenses are going to play 8 men in the box. To me, honestly, you might as well play 9 men in the box. Yeah. Ryan Tannehill didn't show anything to me last year after Derrick Henry and A.J. Brown went down. He showed nothing to me that he's going to be able to beat these teams. So if I'm the defense, I'm playing as many guys in the box as I can. Derrick Henry is good, but that efficiency, as I said, has dropped as teams have started to just play 8 men in the box against the Titans, and they're going to continue to do so until Ryan Tannehill can prove that they can beat him over the top, and I don't think Ryan Tannehill can beat any of these teams over the top, unless you're talking about the Houston Texans, and they only play them twice a year, so... I'm just nervous about the rest of the offense and what it means for Derrick Henry. Plus, as I said, his efficiency has dropped year after year after year. Even in that 2,000-yard season he had, his efficiency was worse than the season before it, just because he got a crazy amount of touches. And everything we've seen from previous running backs, when you get a crazy amount of touches, it doesn't hold up well for your body. He can be as strong as he wants. That has nothing to do with, these injuries we see from these running backs all year. Your knee can be as strong as you want, but you can easily tear an ACL. We saw Saquon Barkley had some of the biggest legs we've ever seen, and he tore his ACL, right? Exactly. So Derrick Henry's got just as big a legs, so it could happen to him too. Yeah. I just want to caution people. To me, he would not be our RB2, but since Jeff and Zach are so high on him, he is our RB2. But let's move on to our RB3. Who Jeff is the lowest on for some unforsaken reason. We're really not sure what Jeff has against this guy. I thought we were friends with this guy. I thought we all liked this guy. Austin Ekeler is our RB3. Will has him at 1. Zach and I both have him at 4. And Jeff has him all the way down there at 6. Come on, Jeff. What are you doing? Will, we'll start with you. We'll start with you first, Will. You have him at 1. He finished at the RB2 last season. I want to know why you think he's going to finish at the RB1 this year.
I think in my gut, and I hope I'm not jinxing you, Austin. I think he makes it through. I think he makes it through the whole season. And if he plays the whole season in that offense with that talent, just not on the offense but on the defense, they're going to put up points. And he's not going to lead the field. He's a first down through third down running back. And in a PPR. If they're really moving the ball, they're really spreading that offense out and running up points. I like Austin Ekeler this year. Now, if he gets hurt, it's all goes to hell, right? But if he stays healthy in this offense, I'm putting my money on him to be RB1 this year.
Yeah, you talk about him getting hurt. He had that 1 year in 2020 where he only played 10 games, but outside of that, 16, 14, and 16. The injuries aren't quite as big a deal as some make it out to be for Austin Ekeler. As I said, he finished at the RB2 last year. I have him ranked as 4 because I see some touchdown regression coming for him. He had 12 on the ground and 8 through the air. I can't see those numbers repeating themselves where he finishes at 20 touchdowns. So that's why I dropped him a couple points. But I think, to me, Austin Ekeler is the starting running back on a very good team. And unlike Derrick Henry, Austin Ekeler is an extremely good receiving back. Austin Ekeler makes his bread in the receiving game. That's how he earned his starting spot on this team. Coming from an undrafted free agent, Austin Ekeler has shown nothing but excellence since coming into the league. He's proven he can outwork everyone else. Otherwise, he would not be here in this current position. I trust him. He didn't have 1,000 rushing yards last year, and he still finished as the RB2. I wouldn't be surprised if he tops 1,000 yards this year and finishes as the RB4, just due to the fact that I think those touchdowns will come back a little bit. Zach, you also have him projected at 4, so you see a little bit of a step back here for Austin Ekeler. Where do you think that's going to come?
I think it's just going to come with the touchdown coming down to earth a little bit, like you mentioned. You said 12 on the ground, 8 through the air. However, though, it's the second time he's had 8 receiving touchdowns in the season, and he was like RB4 2019 before the season where he was last hurt. So this is one of those guys where if you have him as your RB1, just like call it a day. You don't have to really worry about that if you have Austin Ekeler. And not to mention too, like, he's great for the community on top of it. In reality, he should be the number 1 ranked running back just because of how much he appreciates and gives back to the fantasy community. And I think that's something that's, a little underappreciated with some players. Talking to you, Miles Sanders, was never going to draft you anyways. Look at him, exactly like I said, bum. But now back to someone who's not a bum. Austin Ekeler is the man. That offense is super high power. Arguably one of the best offenses in the NFL. I think we mentioned it last episode when we talked about Justin Herbert. You got a great offensive line, great offensive weapons. And Isaiah Spiller, he could be a thorn. But Austin Ekeler was just fine being a timeshare guy with Melvin Gordon in 2019. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they had Justin Jackson, Roundtree. They had a bunch of guys they tried to mix in last year. So they can take all that work that they gave to those other guys and give it to Spiller, and Austin Ekeler's value will still be fine. All right, we got the Austin Ekeler hater coming up here, Jeff. Why you have him all the way down at 6?
You act like I put him at 10.
Well, that's the way you were acting about me and Will having him at. That's the way you were acting about Will and I having Henry at 5. So.
Well, there it is. We're flip-flopping. and that's my only issue with Austin Ekeler. It's not even Isaiah Spiller. It's just I expect that Justin Herbert's going to be slinging that ball around. I mean, with the addition of Joshua Palmer, Allen, Williams, he's just got a lot of guys that he can spread the ball around to, and I see him going deep, especially if they're in a shootout. I'm looking at him basically going deep or trying to hit receivers going down the field, which Ekeler could be one of them. But that's what I'm looking at, the reduction in touchdowns, but also not having as much of a volume or an emphasis on the ball being handed to him, even though he does catch it out of the backfield and he catches it well. I just got a feeling that Herbert's going to be chucking the ball this year a lot more than he has been previously. Just a thought. I'm looking at the offense, and the offense is not built specifically around Austin Ekeler. It's built more around Justin Herbert getting the ball out, hitting those 3 receivers. He's technically could be looked at as the 3rd option in that offense. So that's, to me, I look at Derrick Henry being
I think he might be 1
option. Austin Ekeler maybe being the 3rd option.
I mean, 94. He had 94 targets last year with.
I was going to say he's probably the 2nd target on the team behind Keenan Allen, with Mike Williams being that deep threat guy. But Justin Herbert had all these guys last year, and Austin Ekeler still has 4 targets. So that's where I'm really not worried. Justin Herbert, as he matures, he's going to understand you take what the game's giving you, as opposed to, coming out gunslinging as a rookie. He was down the field all the time. Last year, we saw 94 targets for Austin Ekeler. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets over 100 targets this year out of the backfield, because as we see these quarterbacks mature, you look at Tom Brady right now. Tom Brady just dunking the ball off to Leonard Fournette every opportunity he gets because he understands he can force it downfield, but what does that get him? Probably a net negative. So I'm not super worried about Justin Herbert getting caught up in that whole down the field thing. I think they will have to put up some points this year in that division. But, say they're throwing the ball all the time. You know what that means for Austin Ekeler? He's in the game all the time.
All time.
They're not going to be able to put Spiller in if they're throwing the ball all the time, because that's literally where Austin Ekeler has proven himself to be an elite running back. So I'm not worried too much about that. I just think the touchdowns may come down a little bit. But if the touchdowns go up in this division now that we expect to them to score more points, Will could be right about him finishing as the running back 1. Let's move on.
I believe in you, Austin. I got you.
There you go.
Ride or die, baby. Ride or die.
To a guy that is tied with Austin Ekeler as the RB3, technically. A guy who no one had as their RB1, which is why I put Austin Ekeler first. We have Najee Harris. Will, Jeff, and Zach were all in cahoots on this one. They have him at the RB3. I have him down at RB6. That is all based on the fact that Mr. Trubisky is not Ben Roethlisberger, and he won't just check it down to Najee Harris 94 times this season. Kenny Pickett will come in eventually too, but again, he's a mobile quarterback who is younger. He will like to run. We see the younger quarterbacks, sometimes they opt towards running the ball as opposed to checking it down to a running back. I like Najee Harris. He's going to see the volume. I just can't see that 94 targets going up. I see that coming down more than anything. And he finished last year as the RB3, RB4, depending on your scoring format. So I think that number drops a little bit. The touchdowns, they're probably on a worse offense this year with Mitch Trubisky as opposed to Ben Roethlisberger. Even Kenny Pickett, I think the offense takes a step back. So I think there's a lot that can regress for Najee Harris when it comes to those receptions and those touchdowns. But Zach, Jeff, and Will, you all have him staying at par with what he did last year. So Zach, we'll start with you. Why do you think Najee Harris is going to be the RB3?
It's kind of like a reverse Austin Ekeler thing, where I think the touchdowns are going to kind of bounce back in his favor. This seems like an offense that, I don't know, and I was pretty harsh on the Steelers offense coming into this offseason. I mean, I think maybe I need to readjust, maybe especially after that preseason game. And preseason is always fun for that, making you readjust your teams, and then turns out you were right all along because it's just the preseason. But I can see a world where Mitch Trubisky is fantasy relevant, and the Steelers are, I never count out these great organizations. When these teams that have never really been bad, I mean, Mike Tomlin doesn't have a losing season. That's literally insane. But I'm going to bet on history. I'm going to bet on a good organization and a guy that's the sole centerpiece of that offense. And I think the touchdowns go in a positive direction. I think there was a lot of unlucky touchdown plays. I had Najee last year in a lot of leagues, and there was a ton of getting tackled at the 2-yard line, ton of getting tackled at the 1 or the 5, just not having that like extra burst to get into the end zone. And, sometimes just like it did for Austin Ekeler last year, there was a lot of those were all just red zone goal line attempts for Austin Ekeler, just punching it in. And the same thing could happen for Najee. The receptions will definitely not be in the same ballpark they were last year, but he's still going to be heavily involved. He's a great pass catcher.
Yeah, I think the difference you brought up Austin Ekeler was on a great offense, one of the top in the league. I don't project Steelers to have that same touchdown volume. But with that being said, we know Jeff is a big Najee Harris fan. So, Jeff, what do you think about Najee Harris? You have him at 3. And, Zach, before I want to hear, what do you think Najee Harris' touchdown numbers are going to be this year?
We had 7 last year.
He had 10 total touchdowns last season.
10 total last year. Yeah, I can see him finishing in the 15.
15? Okay.
15 range, and then maybe come down to about 70 targets.
Okay. Jeff, what do you think about Najee Harris?
I think people are going to be surprised this year with the Steelers offense, honestly. You forget, or I won't say you particularly, Zach, but people forget that Trubisky was under Matt Nagy, who basically did not try to control him, did not try to really
I
help
do
him.
not forget about Matt Nagy.
Yeah, that's not going to happen in Pittsburgh. That's not going to happen with Tomlin. That's not going to happen with Matt Canada. And that's the other thing. Pittsburgh, that's what they do is run the ball. That's what they do is target the running back. So he's got everything that is going to be set and built around him, especially with what they're trying to do is, basically not have Trubisky running around or throwing the ball willy-nilly down the field. Everything's going to be controlled, and Najee Harris is going to be that control factor. So that's why I look at him getting heavy volume. I look at him getting a lot of targets. And I think because a lot of people are saying this offense is going to be so lackluster, I think they're going to come out and surprise people. Just like Zach said, they always do. And how much worse could it get than what Big Ben looked like?
I was just thinking that.
That was bad.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm like, I don't look at Mitch Trubisky being that bad. I mean, if you look at a lot of his throws, they were awful. I mean, he was underthrowing guys.
Those awful throws benefited Najee because he couldn't throw the ball 20 yards down the field.
Benefited.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And I think that Mitch Trubisky will be a little bit more accurate with those underneath throws to Najee.
He'll be more willing to take those deep throws to Chase Claypool, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson.
And that might help Najee as well because I think that they'll get down to the middle of the field and then they're going to go ahead and start to run a controlled offense, getting closer to the red zone. And in the red zone, that's where he's going to do a lot of work. So that's what I'm looking for. Everything is controlled with the Steelers, and I'm looking at that being even more controlled this year with an upgrade at quarterback, which a lot of people are downgrading, and I don't know how. So that's why.
To me, Mitch Trubisky is an upgrade at quarterback for the wide receivers, but he's a downgrade at quarterback for Najee Harris. I think he will have a better ball coming out of his hands. But Ben Roethlisberger, as I said, he was immobile. He did not want to get hit. The Steelers have a terrible offensive line. No one's going to dispute that, which doesn't help Najee as a running back, nor does it help the quarterback. But to me, whether it's Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, they're both way more mobile than Ben will be or was last year. And as you said, the red zone opportunities to me probably won't increase to anything we've seen from Austin Ekeler last year. So I'm just a little nervous. I have him at 6 still. So as much as I'm saying all these negatives, I'm just kind of trying to outweigh, the positives everyone else said. I think he's still going to be a top 6 back. But Will, what do you think about Najee Harris? Why do you have him at 3?
Oh, I think Pittsburgh is they understand who they are this year. I don't think there's this fantasy of we have young Ben back there throwing the ball. And I think Tomlinson is a great coach and he understands who his roster is. And when I look at that roster, what I see is a team that's going to play ball control with the schedule they have. And ball control means, I want 3rd and 2. I don't want to go 1st and 7 yards and get my first down on 2nd. I mean, the Steelers are a very good franchise. They understand themselves better than any other team, I think, in the league. Every year they understand who they are. And then they build their team to that strength, and the strength is the running back. That's just the truth. Now, that may change over the season. Maybe they get Trubisky to be a top 10 quarterback, and the wide receivers prove their worth. Now, let me just say last week's game was against the Seahawks. So let's not take that for granted about what this quarterback and wide receiver may do. But
we will not have Seahawks slander around here today.
Yeah.
Yes, we will. Yes, we will.
Jeff, what do you do in that scenario? What do you do in that scenario where it's Steelers Seahawks?
I know it's tough. It's like I got 20 boys. It's like them fighting each other.
Yep.
So,
yep. I mean, the one thing I say about I mean, like if I look at Tyreek Cohen, RB12 last time he played with Mitch Trubisky. Just throwing it out there. And I one could argue that Najee Harris is infinitely more talented than Tyreek Cohen.
He definitely is. That's for sure. I'm just concerned the efficiency wasn't great last year because of the offensive line. So we will see what this offense looks like. Could they have more red zone opportunities than I think they will? They definitely could. And if so, Najee Harris will probably outperform my projections. But if those red zone touches aren't there, to me, this all comes down to what do you think of the Steelers offense and those red zone touches, because the targets are going to be there. They're not going to be what they were last year. I don't think anyone's disputing that. And I don't think anyone's disputing he's going to get the touches on the ground. I think where we have, the differences in opinion is how many red zone touches he's going to get. Yeah. But with that being said, let's move on to my RB1, a guy who we somehow have a consensus RB5. I'm at 1. Zach and Jeff have him at 5, and Will has him at 6. We're going to talk about a guy last year who in the 4 games he played over 50% of the snaps, scored 20-plus every time, a guy who finished as the RB1 just 3 years ago, a guy who has had the injury history, but as we've heard from many football doctors, these injuries aren't related to each other. These have been freak injuries, and he should be okay. We're going to talk about my guy, Christian McCaffrey. He gets an upgrade at quarterback from whatever the heck he's been dealing with at quarterback these past few seasons with Baker Mayfield. As much as I'm not a big fan of Baker Mayfield, it doesn't hurt to have that. The Panthers brought in some offensive line help. Ekwonu with the first-round pick. They brought in Austin Corbett, Bradley Bozeman, all who are going to be great helps to this offensive line to pair with Taylor Moton, who they had last year, who's been great for them. Christian McCaffrey is by far the best receiving running back in the NFL. Whether or not you agree with me that he is the best running back in the NFL, you can't disagree that he's the best receiving back. Those targets are definitely going to be there for him. He is probably the second best wide receiver on this team outside of DJ Moore. When he came out of college, everyone said he was probably the best route runner in his class. He can do everything on the field. He is the Panthers' offense, and as I said last year, in his 4 fully healthy games, he played in 7, but he was only fully healthy and on the field in 4 of them. He scored 20-plus in each one. He's going to do the same when he's on the field this year. And as I have confirmation from the medical analysts, I think he's going to be okay. They say he's not injury prone. I'm going off of that. So, to me, Christian McCaffrey is the RB1. He has the highest ceiling of any of these guys. He's the only active running back to ever put up 1,000 and 1,000, and that's definitely not out of reach again this year. And that, to me, is what he brings to this offense. That receiving upside that no one else here, none of the other guys we've talked about so far have that ability to put up 1,000 and 1,000. And to me, none of these other guys we're going to talk about, except for one, who only made one person's top 10, has this ability to put up 1,000 and 1,000. So Christian McCaffrey is my RB1 in an improved offense with a quarterback who, no, in a offense that should score more touchdowns than they have with Sam Darnold last year. So, Zach, what do you think about Christian McCaffrey this year, and why do you have him at 5?
Well, I mean, I don't have my doctorate degree, but what I can tell you is I've watched enough football to know that a guy that takes a pitch and falls to the ground without being touched is most certainly prone to injuries. But whatever, I'm not qualified enough to make that call. But what I can say is that there's no in between with Christian McCaffrey. I think we've kind of realized that now. If you're that person that's going to take the risk and draft him, I'm honestly surprised that he is this low. I thought I was like super low on Christian McCaffrey, but I guess I'm not.
Turns
that
out Will's
low.
even lower.
Will's even lower, but it's the guy that's gonna. If he plays 16 games, no question he's RB1. There's no doubt in my mind that he will also play 16 games too. There's no way I can see him, or 17 games. Sorry, I just can't see it. I don't know what would give you the confidence to think that would happen. 10 games in 2 seasons. And we've given injury-prone labels to guys with way less, way less time missed. So this is tough, yeah. And the last of the true elite running backs, in my opinion, in this, at least from my list.
Yeah, to me, I'm going off of what I've seen from Pro Football's doctor there in Sports Med Analytics on Instagram, who has his MD. he's come out and said he doesn't think because these injuries aren't related that he's not an injury prone where some guys, have chronic knee problems like Todd Gurley had, and that's what ended his career. He doesn't.
But I think injury prone is that's not the same thing. That's suffering from one injury. I think if you're prone to injury, anything can happen at any time, and that's what happens with him. He pulls a hamstring, or he twists an ankle, or it's he's like Saquon. These uber stupid, crazy athletic guys, their bodies almost can't keep up with how fast they are, or something, because it just seems to Bo Jackson, all these great, incredible athletes. It's almost like a curse to be that good and also have health on your side. It's tough.
Yeah. Like I said, to me, he's got the highest upside of any guy. And as you said, if he plays 16, even if he plays 14 games,
RB1.
and you get to start him through those 14 games, I think he's going to be the RB1. That's why I have him there. I don't project him to play a full 17 games. I would say probably 14 is in that range of outcomes where I think he could play. And as I said, with the improved offensive line, bringing Baker Mayfield, who's not Sam Darnold, he may not be great, but he's not Sam Darnold. So I think he could be improved that way. He's going to get his targets. He's going to get his carries. And he's been efficient every time he has the ball. He doesn't need those Derrick Henry 30 carries a game to get you an RB1 finish. He just needs about 15. So that's kind of what I like to see out of my running backs. Jeff, what do you think about Najee Harris before we move on to Will, who is the lowest?
Also, let us know how you feel about Christian McCaffrey.
Two things we want to talk, and this is what it, just like what Zach was saying. We're talking about the punishment on a guy's body starting to show. That's Christian McCaffrey. He's like the definition of that. Being overworked, being the centerpiece of an offense, it's starting to catch up with him. So it's not necessarily the injury prone. It's just his body starting to break down. I think that's what's starting to happen. And unfortunately, with the coach that you guys have in Matt Rule, I don't see him helping that out that much by trying to take some of that off of his plate. I can see Matt Rule saying, thank God we got CMC back. Let's throw the kitchen sink at him so he's out of there by week 2 because he's gotten too much work. So that's my issue, with CMC. It's just, like we're saying, if we knew for a fact that he was going to play even 14 games, I'd be like, if he wasn't number 1, he'd be number 2. But with the way that he's had these injuries, that's why, just like everybody's so skittish on Saquon Barkley, it's just like we don't know what we're going to get out of him. If we're going to get 2 games, 6 games, or will we get a full season? We have no idea. And there's a coach there that is trying to coach to save his coaching position. So he's like, I need to do whatever I'm going to do to win, which means get the ball to Christian McCaffrey, which defenses know the ball's going to Christian McCaffrey. You guys got one wide receiver, truthfully, DJ Moore. I don't know what Richie Anderson's going to bring. I don't know what Terrace Marshall's going to do. I don't know what Rashard Higgins is going to do. We don't even know what Baker Mayfield's going to do if he's even the quarterback. So there are just so many unknowns. The one thing that people do know is if CMC is back, we got to watch him. Let's hit him, get him out the game. So that's the only reason why I can't go number 1, 2, or 3 with him, because I just don't have the confidence that he's going to give me half a season.
Yeah, I think
I rest my case.
It's just the injury concern there, pretty much from what I heard from Jeff. He's just worried about the injuries and not being able to play his season. We've seen him, put up those numbers with the only wide receiver of note being on the team is DJ Moore. So that really, no, he doesn't count. He was never a wide receiver of note. So that really can't be the concern when we've seen him do that before with Matt Rule as DJ Moore as the head coach. So I'm not super worried about that. It's just the injuries. I think he's going to stay healthy this year with the new offensive line, and hopefully our coaching staff isn't, quite that incompetent. But let's just get some quick thoughts before we move on to the next guy.
So it's injury, it's coaching staff, but then you add in their schedule.
Oh,
No way. No way. That stretch of 49ers, Rams, Buccaneers, Falcons, okay. Bengals, Falcons, Ravens, Broncos. Like this, it's a bad schedule for Carolina this year with a coach whose job's on the line. Because I see 3 games that the Giants, the Falcons twice. The rest of even the Lions, like these are teams that are going to put Carolina in a bad position very quickly with a coach who knows he might not even make it through the season. And if they start off flat, even if they're putting up good numbers, but they're losing, he's not even going to make it through the season. And then what happens? We all see what happens to teams who lose their coach in 4 weeks in, 6 weeks in, 8 weeks in.
Yeah, look at the Raiders last year. They were super good when they got their head coach fired. So
look, if Rule
the Panthers can't have anything worse happen to them at the head coach position. They can only get better.
I don't know. Not mid-season.
Mid-season, they can only get better. They can't get worse than Matt Rule. The only way they can get worse than Matt Rule is if they brought Matt Nagy in for some reason.
Well, if Rule gets fired, who's the head coach?
It literally doesn't matter whether it's Phil Snow or Ben McAdoo. He's better than Matt Rule.
Ben McAdoo, yeah.
Did you say Ben McAdoo?
Better than Matt Rule, yes, he is.
Macadamia.
If McCaffrey was on any other team, I would move him up my rankings. I am more concerned about what's around him, the state of that franchise. I mean, they're getting sued over where they were building their headquarters. I mean, this franchise is a dumpster fire right now. And that pressure to win, that ownership group, they don't have a lot of leeway right now. They are under a lot of pressure. New quarterback fiasco. Everybody wanted Deshaun Watson. They end up with Baker Mayfield. I mean, look, this is not a good situation for the the Panthers players to be in right now. It's just not. And so, yeah, that's why I got him down. It's the injuries, okay. But it's the team around him and the organization around him and their schedule that makes me really nervous about McCaffrey.
Yeah, the schedule to me is not too much of a worry because some of those teams are really good against the run, but they have no one on their team that can cover Christian McCaffrey one-on-one. To me,
no team does.
No team has anyone that can cover Christian.
Chargers, maybe.
But they'll put a nickel back and a safety on him. They're not going to let Christian McCaffrey beat them.
But you can't put a nickelback and the safety on him
while
the Panthers are running 3 wide receiver sets. Whether it's Terrace Marshall or Rashad Higgins, that shows out. Rashad Higgins has been amazing throughout camp, and he's got that connection with Baker Mayfield. We've all seen what
Hard Knocks
they did in Cleveland. Rashad Higgins and Baker Mayfield had that connection. So we'll see. But we do have to move on. But first, I want to throw it over to Zach and talk about the shirt Zach has on.
Oh, yeah.
Where'd you get that shirt from?
Yep. Shopwaveandanchor.com, baby. You know what it is. Had to keep the whole ocean vibe going, you know what I'm saying? So the Sharks kind of like the theoretical team, I guess. But, yeah, appreciate the shout-out, man. I'd love to get some. I got some shirts. I got one going to Zach, but I'm going to get everybody some, at least something you can rock on the show real quick and shout out your boy.
Sure, just wanted to, throw it out there before we go on to the final 5 here.
Not bad. 5 in an hour. We're crushing it, boys.
Yeah, 5 in an hour. So hopefully these next 5 go a little faster than an hour. They should be hopefully less controversial than Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey. So let's hope for the best.
Likely.
So this guy is a guy I thought Will was going to be highest on. This is a guy that Will actually is not highest on, is Dalvin Cook. Zach has Dalvin Cook all the way down at 9. Jeff has him at 8. Will at 4, and I have Dalvin Cook at 3. I like what this new offense is going to bring to Dalvin Cook's, reception totals. I think Dalvin Cook's going to see a lot more targets than he ever has out of the backfield. Dalvin Cook, if he stays healthy for,
there you go,
15, 16 games out of this season, he's going to put up top 3 numbers to me. Well, there you go. So whether he will or he won't, he's never played a full 16, so you can use that in your argument as why you have him down so low. But to me, I think he will play in that 14 to 16 game range, which we've seen before. He finished as the RB2. in that 14 games, so I think he could do the same again this year. And as I said, bringing in the new coaching staff, he's going to be more involved than he ever has in the receptions totals. He's never had more than 53 receptions. I think he'll easily surpass that this year. And I like the Vikings offense as a whole with Justin Jefferson and not Christian Kirk, but Kirk Cousins. So I like the way that they will. And last year, Dalvin Cook only had 6 touchdowns, which was his downfall and why he finished as the RB16. But the 2 years before that, he had 16 and 13. And I think those are more around the numbers of rushing touchdowns he's going to see again this year. So for me, with the new coaching staff, the touchdowns coming back up from his career lows over the past 3 seasons, I think this is everything pointing in the right direction for Dalvin Cook if he stays healthy. Will, I know that's your biggest concern, too, is whether he stays healthy or not, but what else would you like to add on to the positives of Dalvin Cook?
So Dalvin Cook is wide receiver 2. Just letting everybody know. He is wide receiver 2 on the Minnesota Vikings. If you've been paying attention to spring in training camp, they're working him out of the slot. He's going to get the second most catches on this team. It's just going to happen. Now, the problem for Dalvin has been the injuries, but I think watching this preseason game, and it was 1 week, but the Vikings are 4 deep at running back. There's no doubt in my mind they're 4 deep. And they may move Madison before training camp's over because the Nwanga and Chandler are legitimate NFL starters, to be completely honest with you. And so I watching the preseason game, I might have moved him up a little more. I sent mine in, I think, before the game or maybe right after. But the other issue I have is I think he makes 15 games this year because they have such a deep running back bench that they're not going to worry. And I think the Rams did that, right? The Rams rolled running backs through. Dalvin Cook's number 1. It'll be his last year with the Vikings. They will cut him or trade him after the season. So they're going to use him. But they're going to spell him during the game. And Madison's going to be short yardage, no doubt in my mind. But Nwanga and Chandler are going to be 1 or 2 series. One of them will get each game. And they're going to put up numbers. But all that being said, I still think he's wide receiver 2, especially as the season goes on. It's that offense in training camp, that what they're installing, they know the tool they got with him. They know they're only got him for 1 more year. And they are going to use him in that passing game. And that offensive line right now looks good. Center still question mark. Ed Ingram is moved into the starting lineup today with the joint practices with the 49ers. So the right guard position looks good now. If they don't have to leave a running back in to block and they can go 4 wide receivers and a running back out in, I'm telling you, Dalvin may get 75, 80 receptions this year.
Yeah, I can see. Like I said, I think this offense is going to bring those reception numbers up for him. Just as you said, from what they've been doing in training camp and the fact that, they want to get Dalvin Cook the ball as many ways as they can, and through the air is going to be a big way that they can do that as opposed to what he's done in the previous seasons. And those touchdowns, they will come up at some point. He's only had 3 career receiving touchdowns throughout his entire career. So that number has got to come up too. He could set a career high in receiving touchdowns with 3 this year. And if he does that, that's 3 more than he had last year through the air. So that's already more points than he had last year. So, I think this is going to be good for Dalvin Cook. Jeff, you have him at 8. Well, you're a little bit farther down on Dalvin Cook, but obviously you're not the Dalvin Cook hater. You're not the lowest on Dalvin Cook. So what are your thoughts on him?
Definitely injury. He always seems to have the nagging injuries. And again, it's one of those things where we're talking about possibly breaking down. He's 27. He's got a lot of mileage on him. And it's been a chronic thing from college all the way through the pros. I don't know. I'm still possibly looking at the offense under Zimmer. But while I'm watching Kirk Cousins throw, he's looking at his wide receivers. He's Jefferson or Thielen. And so that's why I'm looking at that's where those targets are going to go, not necessarily to Dalvin Cook. Now, him and having this new position might work out, but just like you said, he's only had 3 touchdowns his career with receptions. So the other important thing was Will talking to me this weekend. I went back and looked at that game against the Raiders, man, and they are deep at running back, which
Okay.
means they can go ahead and pull him out and give him and try to save him. So all of those factors, man, to me, it spells him, getting less volume, less possible snaps. So that's why he's so low to me. I'd rather have a few other guys that I kind of know a little bit younger, a little bit more centered in that offense. I'm just looking at Justin Jefferson, him and Kirk Cousins going to work this season, but I could be wrong.
Anything
I just
quick
see
you
7
want?
other guys I'd rather have.
Anything quick on here you want to add, Zach, before we move on to the next guy?
Yeah, real quick. It's more so it's the surrounding pieces. Will, I'm disappointed you didn't say Adam Thielen is the wide receiver too. I don't know why, but I just feel like as a Viking fans, like I don't know, he's like one of those guys that's like close to the heart, I feel. But for me, he is for fantasy. But it's just that I project Jefferson, Thielen to grab a ton of touchdowns. Irv Smith coming back healthy, is that
possibly? He's currently hurt. He might be back week 1.
So?
Injury prone.
I mean, Kirk Cousins not throwing for more than 33 touchdowns. So just simple math. I don't see Dalvin Cook coming down with a large share of those
3.
touchdowns.
He's only got to come down with 3, and that'll be a career high.
Right. You're asking for a career high from a guy that can't play more than 14 games. So it's just a lot to work against it, and it's how much I believe in Jefferson and Thielen. So I don't want Will to think I'm hating on the Vikings. I just have way more confidence in the wide receivers. I have Jefferson as wide receiver 1. So spoiler.
Yeah, you got to make sure you tune in next week for the wide receiver rankings. But let's move on to a guy who I guess is pretty much works against what Jeff was just saying. This guy is 27 years old. He's only played 16 games once in his career. But Jeff is the highest on him at 4. This guy's got a big negative at coach this year as a comparison to last year. This guy is not even on Will's top 10 list. We have Alvin Kamara as our running back 7.
10, 11.
There you go. So
I got him at 11.
11. Jeff has him at 4. I have him at 7, and Zach has him at 8. By the sounds of things, he will not be suspended this year. That's likely going to be a next year thing, which is big for him. So when he's been playing in that Sean Payton offense, Sean Payton has been able to bring him in and out of the game more often than me, as a Kamara owner, have liked in the past. I want him to always be on the field, and I think that's something he probably will do more this year. But he's dealt with injuries when Sean Payton has only had him on the field for 60% of the time. That's something that concerns me with Alvin Kamara. I'm not super worried about that, though. I'm just more worried about what this offense is going to be in comparison to the Drew Brees offense. You look at last season, he still finished as a top 10 running back, and that's kind of where I think he's going to finish again. He finished at the RB8 last year, and I think he's going to finish around that 7-8 range. This is where Zach and I have him. With Jameis Winston at quarterback, he's not going to see the same targets he saw with Drew Brees. We're going to see similar kind of the targets we saw last year, which was a step down. He only had around 60-something targets last year, if I remember correctly, where those Drew Brees seasons, he was 100+. I can't see him bringing back those numbers. And his crazy touchdown seasons we've seen before in that Drew Brees, Sean Payton offense is not something I see this offense recreating, because I don't think they're going to be as good as they were when Michael Thomas was what he was. Sean Payton and Drew Brees had that connection, and Alvin Kamara was in there throughout all those, red zone touches. He had that 6-touchdown game. I can't see him recreating that type of thing. He only had 4 rushing touchdowns last year, and if he only has 4 rushing touchdowns again this year, that's going to be a major, major disappointment. So for those reasons, I have Alvin Kamara as my running back 7. With all that being said, he's going to be extremely involved in the offense. I just don't project this offense to be as good as they have been in the past. A little nervous about the injuries, but that's not really why he's my 7. It's just due to the fact that I think this offense is going to be worse than they were before. Jeff, you have him taking a big step up, finishing as the RB4, which he's done 3 times before. He's finished higher than RB4, so let me know why you think he's going to do that this year without Sean Payton, without Drew Brees, and with a worse offensive line now that Teron Armstead is gone.
Well, one of the reasons is they did not have Jameis Winston a whole lot of last year. They really had a whole lot of nothing last year. So I kind of don't even really, and he still produced, just not the normal Alvin Kamara numbers. I mean, they basically had no wide receiver, didn't have a quarterback. Hell, they had Ian Book in there towards the end of the season, so it was horrible. This is probably the best wide receiver core that he's been with since his time as a Saint. I mean, you're going to have to watch Olave. Thomas is hopefully back. There's been saying he's been looking electric in camp. You got Jarvis Landry underneath. But I think this is going to open up things for him, one, to run the ball and also for the dump-offs. I think they're going to work with Jameis, be like, hey, don't try to keep going after the home run. Take what the defense gives you, and they're going to give you a lot of Alvin Kamara this year. So that's my thing. I think the main thing is him being able to play the full year and playing in an offense. I think that could surprise some people because of the wide receiver set that they have. So his skill set is amazing, and I think when he gets in space, he's one of the best there is. And I'm thinking that he might be able to prove that this year.
Yeah, so through Jameis Winston's 6 healthy games last year, Alvin Kamara had 1 rushing touchdown. We can't have those numbers. He did have the receiving work, but to me, Jameis Winston was a product of Sean Payton's offense. Him not going for it all was a product of Sean Payton, who is one of the best coaches we've seen in a long, long time, one of the best in NFL history. And I don't think Pete Carmichael can keep Jameis Winston in check like Sean Payton could. So I think we will see more of those deep balls, especially as you said, they've got a really good wide receiver core this year. So what's to stop Jameis Winston from, oh, yeah, we got this guy. He's better than whoever he's lined up against. Let's just toss it down there and see what happens. We saw him do that in Tampa Bay. That's my worry is I don't trust this offense without Sean Payton. I trusted them last year without Drew Brees because Sean Payton was still there, but I don't know how well Pete Carmichael can run this offense. And can he run this offense enough to support a running back who you project to be top 5? I just can't quite do it. Their coach is a defensive-minded head coach, so they probably will run the ball. Hopefully more. But with Mark Ingram back, they will probably get him involved a little bit, which helps to spell Kamara. But will Mark Ingram be in enough to keep Kamara healthy?
I don't think so.
Exactly. He won't be in enough to keep Kamara healthy. That's the problem. Kamara's never been able to handle being in the game for 80% of the snaps last year. So when he was in Sean Payton's offense, but Drew Brees wasn't there, he was on the field for more than 80% of the times, 5 times before he got hurt. And that was more than we've seen the previous seasons where he was all in that 60s. He never had, so in his big year, he was never on the field more than 80% of the time once. And that was his best season. So this year, injuries are going to be a problem most likely for a guy who's never dealt with this, who's 27. It's just a lot of questions in an offense that has a lot of questions, and they have a lot of receiving talent. Zach, what do you think about Alvin Kamara this season?
I mean, just listening to all the arguments the last 2 guys, Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara, they've all kind of like meshed into each other, which is kind of why I have them so close in my own personal rankings. But it's weird because we're kind of using reverse logic for each guy. We're saying that the Saints wide receiver core is better than the Vikings wide receiver core.
It's a lot better than the Vikings wide receiver core.
Fair.
The
Fair
Vikings
point.
also added an offensive-minded head coach who said he's going to get Dalvin Cook the ball more.
Did you just say the Saints wide receiver core is better than the Vikings?
Yes.
Wow.
So that's kind of my thing. So we can't use the argument of all these wide receivers taking away
Justin
from Alvin
Jefferson
Kamara.
by himself is a
My argument's not that the
receiver.
wide receivers are going to be taken away from Alvin Kamara. It's that Jameis Winston is going to be taken away from Alvin Kamara with the weapons he has this year.
Which is fair, and kind of combining that idea, the same thing with the quarterbacks too. Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston also kind of ranks similarly amongst the industry. But I just kind of look at it like, how can we expect a career high from Dalvin Cook in receiving touchdowns, who never does get receiving touchdowns or work and has a better wide receiver core? And how can we not say that Alvin Kamara has I have them pretty neck and neck in my rankings, but it just seems we're being a little unfair to Alvin Kamara when you look at a guy this is his last finishes, never playing more than one season with 16, 8, 1, 9, 4, 3. That's, I mean, he's never, even in standard leagues, the lowest he's ever finished as wide receiver is a running back 17, and he played 13 games last season. I want to talk about untapped potential. I mean, I'm probably making the case for me to move him up, to be totally honest. Now that I'm thinking about it, because this suspension was kind of looming when I initially made these kind of reports are a little newer that he's not going to get suspended. But man, I mean, talk about a guy that's done nothing but be a top 10 running back every single season since entering the NFL.
That's why I have him top 10. Will, what do you want to say about Alvin?
But see, I think if we think about it, right, there really is an uncertainty with the coaching staff and what it means for the offense. Like if we're talking about in comparison to Dalvin Cook, we went from Mike Zimmer, who believed in running the ball first and second down and then throwing it on third, to an offense now that they throw the ball every down and they get everybody involved, right? Well, the same thing with the Saints. I don't know what that same offense is really going to look like. Right. I don't know if Jameis Winston can stay healthy, which Jameis Winston I'm getting. It's one thing to say Jameis Winston under Sean Payton. Yeah, last year I liked Jameis Winston. Now, I'm supposed to believe that this current coaching staff has the same wisdom and ability to develop a quarterback that Sean Payton had? No. So it's a risk, and this is why I have him at 11. If we did top 11, Kamara's 11 for me because he is older. Okay, his offense I think is a downgrade. I don't know, the wide receivers are okay, but we don't know what Michael Thomas is going to do. We don't know name a wide receiver on that team that's really proven right now. We have some good years, but are you really going to tell me you're going to drop Michael Thomas as in your top 10 wide receivers this year? No,
never. Not even close.
So and I get that means Kamara might get the ball more, but I mean, if Andy Dalton's the starting quarterback, how are you feeling about the Saints and Kamara then?
I probably like Kamara more with Andy Dalton at quarterback.
He'll get more touches.
He's going to get more. He's going to get more receptions.
He'll get more touches, but they're not going to score.
No, I don't think they're going to score either way this year.
So there's going to be no touchdowns.
So I think
he's a top 10 running back with no touchdowns. That don't make no sense.
Will and I are lower on Kamara because we both believe Sean Payton was the offense in New Orleans.
Doug Martin. That's all I'm going to say. Mic drop.
Well, just check this. Doug Martin.
Check.
Who was
it? James Winston,
head coach.
Was it? Oh, jeez. No, who was it? It was the older white dude with the curly gray hair. He was right before. No.
Yeah, I can't remember what his name was. That's what
you're talking about. Oh, damn.
I know who it is. I just can't think of his name.
He was like a 2-season guy. He was like a nobody.
Yeah. But it wasn't, that was Jameson Winston, when he had his third.
Well, maybe we can say with Kamara I will say this. I think Kamara of all the running backs has the biggest range. Like he could be 19 or he could be 1. The question is when we're making rankings, it's hard for me to move him with that big of a range into a sure lock like I would Austin Ekeler or Najee Harris or Derrick Henry. Someone for sure Derrick Henry's going to get those touches. I may not have him number 1, but he's going to get those touches. I just don't know with Kamara and that coaching staff and Jameis Winston makes me. It just he has to
without Sean Payton because
he has to put a whole season in and make me a believer, right?
But we were both in on Jameis last year.
I was too. Yeah, I was in with Jameis.
That's why I said we were both in on Jameis last year because of Sean Payton. And without Sean Payton there this year, I'm out on most of the Saints. I like Alvin Kamara, and if he's fallen in drafts because people are still worried about the suspension, I'll be taking him in drafts because I think he's got that upside. I'm just nervous about those touchdowns that we've seen in previous years. And last year he had lost almost 40 targets in comparison to the previous year with Drew Brees. And he's not going to repeat as a top 5 running back unless he gets those targets back up. And, I think that was a product of Sean Payton's offense, having an old quarterback who couldn't move. So we'll see what happens. Let's move on to a guy who we are pretty much guaranteed is going to see 100 targets this year. Talking about my guy, Aaron Jones. I have him at 8. Zach, Will, and Jeff, you guys all have him at 10. This is a guy who scored 4 rushing touchdowns on the ground last year, but had 6 through the air. He could possibly be the number 1 target in this Green Bay Packers offense. That's a real possibility. And to me, there's only one running back that we've named so far that could also be the number 1 target on their team, and that's Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
So Aaron Jones has that ability. He has, whether you have him as the 2nd greatest quarterback of all time or close to it, Aaron Rodgers is throwing him the ball. He doesn't have Javonte Adams to throw to this year. A.J. Dillon's going to get involved, but everything I've heard is there's going to be many, many opportunities where A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones are both on the field together. And Aaron Jones gets that receiving work, which to me sets him far apart from A.J. Dillon. I think the targets are going to go up again this year. He'll probably see in between that, 80 target range if I had to guess. That's where I'm currently projecting him to be, but I'm not going to be surprised if he hits that 100 target mark. That's something I think is in the possibility for him. And the rushing touchdowns may not be there because A.J. Dillon's going to get some of that goal line work, but the receiving touchdowns are going to be there for him. He's going to he'll put up more than he did last year with 6. With Davante Adams being gone, maybe they look to his way more in the red zone this year. Maybe he puts up 8, 10 receiving touchdowns. That's not something I see out of the possibility for him. That's why I have him at 8. You guys all have him at 10. He's the last guy who made everyone's top 10s. I feel like, overall, we're all in on Aaron Jones because he's going to see this passing work. Zach, we'll start with you. What are your quick thoughts on Aaron Jones?
He could be higher, and if we were drafting right now, depending on team makeup and things like that, and where I go with my first round pick. But in the league we're all in together, League One, I spent $38 my budget on him, so it shows I'm definitely in on Aaron Jones this year. But for me, why he is at 10 is I believe in my list he would be the first guy that kind of shares the backfield. For sure. Like the other guys, you can make arguments, whatever, but no doubt him and A.J. Dillon will share the field this year. What's, chicken or the egg? Does Davante Adams cause Aaron Jones' previous production, to be so prolific? Or was it the other way around, or does Aaron Jones make up for what they're going to lack with the loss of Davante Adams? So it'd be interesting to see. I could see a world where he finishes top, even top 3. Like Zach said, I'm totally with that. The idea of him being the target leader for running backs is pretty easy. And anytime you have a guy that's hovering around 100 targets, you're almost guaranteed a top 3 finish. So, yep.
Jeff, what are your thoughts on Aaron Jones?
Yeah, he'd be a lot higher on my list if A.J. Dillon wasn't there and they're talking about upping his workload to where it's just like Zach said, sharing. They said 50-50 this year. So that kind of scares me. And it looks like goal line is just all going to be Dillon's work. So, major drop for me, but still in the top 10 because he's still in a high-producing offense. And he has proven that he is elusive. When he gets the ball in his hand in open field, he can do a lot of things. And he will be getting those targets. So he still stays in the top 10.
Yeah, for sure. Will, what do you think about Aaron Jones?
I would have moved him up had I seen the stories I saw today about the fight brewing now between Rodgers and the wide receivers, and how Rodgers called them out, and then the wide receivers supposedly called a meeting with the quarterbacks today to complain. Yeah, he's going to be the leading fantasy point. Him and Aaron Rodgers. It's already like kind of starting to fall in on itself on these wide receivers. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Dillon and Jones along the field a lot together, and they motion Jones into like a slot or something like that. This wide receiver thing is going to be a problem all year, as we all knew it was going. Look, we all knew this could really blow up on the Packers, and that can't be good 2 weeks into camp. And Rodgers publicly criticizing the wide receivers, and they had a meeting today.
So in Aaron Jones's 7 games without Davante Adams over the past 3 seasons, he's averaged just under 7 targets a game. You average that out to the 17-game season. Now that would be 114 targets.
There you go.
And that's a number from the running back position that I really like. Will it be 114? Probably not. It'll probably be lower. But as Will said, Christian Watson, he hasn't really practiced yet. Aaron Rodgers has problems with his wide receivers, which we kind of all expected. You can't go this long playing with Javonte Adams and then just automatically switch to Allen Lazard being your wide receiver 1 when he really never emerged himself to be the wide receiver 2 on the previous Packers team. So this will be something that's interesting to watch, but I think we're all in on Aaron Jones this year, especially to me, early second round is where I'm quite happy with Aaron Jones. I think he's going to be a staple on any team. Injuries aren't really a big concern, and I think we all know that those receptions in half point or full PPR, they're going to make up for any Aaron or AJ Dillon, pestering that's going to happen. But let's move on to a guy that Zach has at 6, Will at 8. I have him at 9, and he didn't make Jeff's top 10. We're going to talk about Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon is on one of the best offenses in the NFL. The offensive line gets better. I'm just worried this team will take a step back from everything we've seen from Super Bowl losers. They take a step back. I still have him at 9. I don't think he's going to fall out of the top 10. I don't think that's really in the cards for him. I think he's still going to be a great running back. And I think the offensive line improvements definitely helps him a lot. I'm just a little bit concerned with the offense as a whole. I don't think any of us are really projecting him to, finish as the top 4 wide receiver or running back again this year. He had 1,200 yards on the ground last year, and he was involved in the passing game as well with 48 targets. So I'm just a little nervous that the entire offense as a whole takes a step back, and I think that's kind of where most people are at with him. Zach, you have him at 6, only a little step back. Are you nervous about the offense taking a step back, or are you just excited that he'll probably take a little bit of a step back, but he's got that improved offensive line to work with?
Exactly. Get Jonah Williams back. You get Joe Burrow another year removed from injury. You get, Jamar Chase, arguably one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. T. Higgins, who is, again, we talked about it last episode, another top 24 wide receiver for most people. It's just in a great situation, and I can't just make up an idea or a scenario where this team would take a step backwards when they just played in the Super Bowl. And I don't know if they lost anything too notable.
The only argument to that is you really can't do any better than playing in the Super Bowl.
Right. So, I think giving Joe Mixon a natural regression is kind of safe to say that he lands right around that 6th spot. And in any game, if you throw out his rookie season and you throw out the season where he's injured, you're looking at 10, 13, and 4 as his PPR finishes. And a lot of things too that I think just to kind of encompass this whole ranking thing too. It all depends on how you look at rankings. Sometimes I don't necessarily just go down my rankings list and check off and that's exactly how I'll go. I'm more so look at it when I'm trying to build a team of guys that I feel comfortable that I it's volume first for me. And I think Joe Mixon kind of falls under, he's kind of like that little cutoff, I think, as far as guys that are, at least for me, again, personally, because we're all over the place with our different rankings. But for me, he's one of those last real high volume guys. Even with that passing offense being so efficient, it's a lot of 70-yard plays to Jamar Chase getting tripped up by the cornerback at the 5, and then Joe Mixon to just punch it in because he's just a freight train. And that's what last season was. That's where he got those 12 touchdowns. I mean, if you look at that touchdown explosion last year, I mean, it's almost doubled his career high before that.
Exactly.
So
what Dalvin Cook's going to do in the receiving game this year, double his career high. He's going to hit 4 this year. But yeah, I like what you're saying. I think he's a great running back on a great offense. I just, natural regression is going to come to this offense as a whole. Don't be surprised if a lot of their skill players take a little bit of a step back. Jamar Chase will probably finish around the same, but he'll have less big plays, more targets type situation. So we'll see what Joe Mixon does here. Will, you have him at 8 before we go to the guy who doesn't have him in his top 10. Will, anything you want to add to what Zach and I said?
He's just a safe. I think he's top 10. With that off, unless Burrows gets hurt, I think he's top 10. And he still might be, even if there's a quarterback issue there. So, it's when I was doing my rankings, honestly, when I got to 8, there's not a big difference to me between 8 and 15. I just think I'm kind of get who's my safe bet? It's going to get me points. And then that's why I have him at 8 and Kamara at 11, because there's too much unknown for me with Kamara.
Yeah, that's fair. Jeff, Joe Mixon didn't make your top 10. and I want to hear why.
Well, let me say, I've been snake bitten by him in the past.
All right, well, that's all we need to hear.
Okay, McCaffrey.
Yeah.
So I kind of agree with what Zach said. The whole offense going kind of through Jamar Chase, I look at that. Getting the ball down the field, getting it around the 5-yard line, and letting them punch in. He wasn't doing that prior to this, and that's what I'm saying. If he keeps it up, yeah, he could be top 5. But I'm looking at this offense taking a step back, especially people kind of discount that defense of that whole division in the AFC North, man. So that's the thing. He's going to be, 2 times a year, Steelers, Ravens, and now the Browns might even have a pretty decent run defense. So that's 6 games where this guy could
bring out the broom.
A tough sledding. I don't see it. I think those other teams this year there's going to be a lot of get back against the Bengals this year. I think, at least. I don't think they're going to be sweeping that division. I know for a fact the Steelers defense, that's all they've been waiting is to get back at the Bengals this year. So not only just having the natural regression, but the Super Bowl loss and everything, like most Super Bowl losers end up regressing. But I think just that defense, the defenses he's going to face in the AFC North is going to prove a little bit more difficult this year for him as well. So.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, but I think what you said to start, that you have been snake bitten by him, is probably
that too.
The main reason he's not in your top 10, because he is the number 1 running back for a top 5 offense. So I think, he is safe,
top
as
5
Will
last
said.
Year.
Top 5. I think they'll still be a top 5 offense.
And the thing is, too, is like he didn't have Jamar Chase before last year. The year before the year before they drafted Joe Burrow, he was RB13 when they had the number 1 overall pick.
And he was hurt that year. Was he not for a couple games?
That's another thing.
He played as well. He played 16 games, and honestly, besides the 2020 season, other than that, it's 16, 16, 14, and 14. So like I said, the year before they drafted Joe Burrow, he's RB13. So they're the worst team in the league. He's a top 15 running back. They're the best. They go to the Super Bowl, and he's top 5. So you're absolutely right. He's safe, but I can also I hear you, Jeff, because I can see a lot of those touchdowns coming down, and he will fall more into the category of where you have him if that touchdown regression is
where do you have him, Jeff? Where would you have him ranked?
I have him probably about 12, 13. And let me say this.
So you're taking Zeke over?
Injuries, missing games. He gets those freak injuries, and he'll play like 3 quarters, and he's out in the 4th quarter. When you need them,
So real quick, time out. Just this or that with Jeff, real fast. Ezekiel Elliott, Joe Mixon.
That's tough. Honestly, I was thinking about.
I'm thinking Joe Mixon easy over
Joe
that.
Mixon easy on that.
Put it like this. I'm taking Saquon Barkley over Joe Mixon.
Whoa! No, I can see that. That's because of the upside, and if he is removed from the injury,
there for Joe Mixon more than it is for Saquon Barkley, because Joe Mixon could easily have 15 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley's gonna have to do a hell of a lot and break at least 10 80-yard touchdowns if he wants to have a chance at 15.
That is true.
That's the big difference there.
It's a lot of 90-yard runs for Saquon.
Yeah, I think so. But let's move on to number 10. And then we have 4 other guys. Each one of us is just going to quickly touch on. Number 10 is a guy that Will and Jeff both have inside their top 10. We're going to talk about Javonte Williams. Zach and I have him just outside the top 10, just due to the fact that I think Melvin Gordon's coming back. That's where it is for me. Melvin Gordon's going to take work out of this backfield. Javonte Williams will take a step forward. He'll probably see more touches than he saw last year. Last year with Melvin Gordon, he finished as the running back 17. I could see him bumping that up, probably around 5 or 6 spots and just leave him outside that top 10. The offense got better with Russell Wilson, but they brought back Melvin Gordon. I love that for the Broncos themselves. I think that was a great move for their football team. I strongly dislike that for their fantasy football outcomes. I'm just a little nervous that he's not going to see, that Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey, Najee Harris, all those guys are going to see that guaranteed workload of being their number one running back. And Javonte Williams might be the number one running back in a 60-40 split. So I'm just a little nervous that way. Zach, I'll let you jump in here quick because you also don't have him in your top 10 before we let Jeff and Will talk about him. But why do you kind of have him outside your top 10?
Because out of all these running backs that are stuck in a committee, I think he has probably the best running back behind him. And that's saying something because I'm pretty high on Tony Pollard too. But Melvin Gordon, you're looking at a guy that has nothing but top 24 finishes and a ton of top 15 finishes. So I don't like the disrespect that's been going on to Melvin Gordon. It seems like he's like, and I get it. We all want Javonte Williams to explode. That's great and all, but he's still there. And it's just going to cap his ceiling enough to where he just can't. I don't see how he finishes higher than top 12 just with sharing the backfield.
Yeah. The only way I could see him finishing too much in the top 10, he could finish top 5 if Melvin Gordon goes out and gets hurt week 1.
Oh, easy.
That's the way I see him finishing higher than where I currently have him projected is if Melvin Gordon gets hurt. But if Melvin Gordon plays for majority of the season, I think it'll be tough. Will, you are the highest. You have him at 7. Why are you so high on Javonte Williams this year?
I think this offense is going to be different than we ever saw. I think Russell Wilson makes that big of an impact. Look, Melvin Gordon, there's a story in Pro Football Talk. Melvin Gordon said today that he's convinced that the team is going to feature Williams as the full-time RB1.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he said that the team...
I think we got to be careful we're not looking back at last year and not understanding how Williams, to me, complements the offense better with Russell Wilson than Gordon does. I think Gordon will get his carries, but I think Williams is going to surprise a lot of people this year, and that's why I'm high on him, Mike. That's why I got him at 7. And he could go way higher than that. He could be top 5 depending on how this Bronco offense clicks. Russ kind of likes his guys, right? Right, Jeff? I mean, Russ likes – I don't think it's coincidental. He's been in camp now for a couple of weeks, and now Melvin Gordon is publicly stating in an interview Williams is the RB1. They're going to feature him.
Broncos country.
Jeff, what do you think?
Let's ride.
Stop it, Zach. No. And I think that's the misconception. Everybody is expecting Russ to just get in there and start slinging it. Everybody's talking about Russ cooking. Yeah. Russ likes to check down like the next quarterback. Mm-hmm. Russ can go ahead. He's smart enough sometimes where if this guy is going to be open and he can go ahead and get some open space and make some moves, Russ is going to drop that ball off to him and let him do his thing. Everybody thinks that's what he did in a lot of the great years in Seattle is dump that ball off. And that's the thing. Everybody just thinks that he's going to get to Denver and now him and Cortland Sutton are just going to be playing pitch and catch every down. And that's not going to happen. I think one of the guys that's going to benefit on receptions is going to be Javonte Williams. I think Melvin Gordon may get in there, basically a featured third down back. But I think if Javonte Williams starts off hot, I think they're just going to go ahead and keep feeding the hot hand. It's not going to be like it was with Fangio. Fangio was just, I'm going to run the ball, and I want to make sure the rookie doesn't get hurt or cause me any costly mistakes being a rookie. I'm going to make sure I've got the veteran in there getting an equal load. I don't think that's happening this year.
Yeah, I can see it. I just think, to me, Melvin Gordon's too good of a running back to keep off the field. Like, I don't see Javonte Williams coming out and having 70% of the work out of this backfield. I don't think that's something that's really in the field of outcome.
And one more thing. You forget Nathaniel Hackett was Green Bay's OC, is now the head coach. So I can see Javonte being that same type of thing that Aaron Jones was. So that's the other thing as well.
Yeah, but AJ Dillon was still uber involved in that offense, and that's something I think that Melvin Gordon will do as well. He will be involved in that offense, and if Melvin Gordon, as you say, is going to fill this A.J. Dillon role, that's all of the goal line work, and that takes away from those touchdowns that you said Javonte Williams was going to get. He could get more of the receiving work than Melvin Gordon, but Melvin Gordon's also proven to us in his 80-target year in the Chargers that he can catch the ball too. So I think it's just tough for him to have an opportunity to get 70% of that work in that backfield. Right. I think that's just why I think I have him a little bit outside the top 10. I love the talent, and if they didn't re-sign Melvin Gordon, he would have been top 5 for me.
Same.
But Melvin Gordon just is going to be annoying for everyone who owns Javonte Williams this year.
We'll see.
I mean,
more insurance. That's my goal.
Melvin Gordon can run in the beach sand with Timberlands on.
Yeah. Not too much harder than that. So
East Coast guy, let me tell you, I rock a lot of Timberlands. They are not easy to run in. Never mind running beach sand.
Yeah.
But look what happened. He did that, and what's happened to him right now? He's hurt.
He's hurt.
So
Yeah.
He does
damn,
break
I should have wore sneakers.
That breaks down.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll break down, but when he's only seeing about 40% of the work, he's not going to break down quite so fast. So I think it's something that is important.
He says it's 40. It could be 30. Might be 20.
I just finished saying that Javonte Williams isn't going to see 70%. So if he's not seeing 70%, then Melvin Gordon's going to see more than 30. But let's move on to I talked about a little bit earlier, a guy who I think is one of the only guys who could have that 1,000 season that Christian McCaffrey had. This is a guy who only made Zach's top 10. Zach has him at number 7. And to me, that is DeAndre Swift.
Oh, no.
DeAndre Swift has an extremely, extremely high upside. He's on an offense that probably won't be great, but their defense also sucks, which means they're going to be behind in a lot of games, which leads to him having that close to 1,000 type season. He came out and said earlier today that he wants 1,000, and that is his only goal for this upcoming season. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing that he's not aiming for a Super Bowl, I think he's at least being realistic in his goals. The Lions aren't going to win a Super Bowl, but DeAndre Swift could easily have 1,000. So that's something I am excited to see. I just got a lot of questions within this offense itself, as well as within whether or not he can stay healthy. Zach, you have him at 7. Let us know why.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, let's not overplay the injury thing. 2 seasons, 13 games. So it's not like he's absolutely killing you. I mean, the fantasy season is only 14, whatever regular season weeks it is. But yeah, it's the upside. It's the third-year running back breakout kind of scenario. It's PPR. It's an improved offense. PFF's one of their top 3 offensive lines, if I'm not mistaken. I think the defense will actually be a lot better than expected. And this team lost a ton of one possession games last year. It's last second. Justin Tucker had the longest kick in NFL history against them so just a lot of bad breaks. The one thing that's kind of making me nervous watching Hard Knocks is Jamal Williams. Not because he's going to take away any of the work, but because if you watch him in that huddle at the end of that where he starts crying and stuff, that guy may want to see a therapist of some sort. But I think the team's going to be good, and I think DeAndre Swift, even if he gives you 13 games, if it's 13 games of an improved offense of what we saw last year, I mean, people are going nuts over Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's the wide receiver 3 for this team, or so it's like I don't know. His draft value alone almost makes it worth to put him higher in the rankings, because I feel like you're going to get a PPR stud as your, potentially RB2 depending on how your draft falls.
Yeah, he could be a guy who could possibly be, number 2, 3 target on this team. We know Jared Goff could like to target. He likes to target his running backs. We saw that in LA. Jared Goff.
Talking to you, Todd Gurley.
Jared Goff.
There's some questions. I think that's why he didn't make Jeff or Will's top 10 as well as mine. He was just outside of mine, but I do like the upside, and I think he's a guy, if you compare him with a safe running back 1, or if you take him as your RB1 and pair him with some good wide receivers and a safe RB2, I think that's definitely a pairing that can help. So I think he'll have some boom weeks, but I think he'll also have some bust weeks. Let's quickly move on to a guy who Jeff has at number 7, who is probably the most talented running back we've talked about since Christian McCaffrey. and that's going to be Nick Chubb.
Oh, Cordell Patterson.
No, not Cordell
What?
Patterson. That's going to be Nick Chubb. Jeff has Nick Chubb at the running back 7. To me, Deshaun Watson's probably going to miss most of the season. Kareem Hunt is there. I don't trust Jacoby Brissett.
What?
And, Nick Chubb
not?
is just a really good running back that has never really turned out to be, that elite fantasy running back we've wanted him to be. Jeff, you have him at 7. Why do you think he's going to make that jump this year?
Well, with the issues with Kareem Hunt possibly trying to hold out, Jacoby Brissett being the quarterback, Kevin Stefanski still wanting to run the ball. If he can stay healthy, I believe he's going to produce. We talk about who's our number 1, JT, right? Jacoby Brissett was his quarterback. He still did well. So I'm thinking that Jacoby Brissett is not going to kill his value. Matter of fact, it's going to possibly enhance it to where he will be receiving the ball more. I don't think they're going to really try to stack the box so much. You have an upgrade at wide receiver with Amari Cooper there. So, I think he can run.
He can run, but they will stack the box against him because they're not worried about Jacoby Brissett and Amari Cooper connecting for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in a game because that's never going to happen.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Kareem Hunt is their receiving back, and that's why Jonathan Taylor was okay with Jacoby Brissett because Jonathan Taylor catches the ball out of the backfield extremely well, and that's not a role we've seen the Browns let Nick Chubb take on. Whether he can do it or not, I'm quite sure he's talented enough he could do it. They just don't let him because that's Kareem Hunt's job. So that's why I am, lower on Nick Chubb and out on him because every year he gets drafted based on the fact that he is one of the best pure runners in the NFL. It doesn't quite translate to fantasy, and that is my problem. Let's move on. Will, you have a guy ranked at 9 who didn't make anyone else's top 10. Yeah. Cam Akers of the Los Angeles Rams. He's got an extremely high upside, just issues with the injuries.
Yeah,
why you have him in your top 10?
I just think he's going to get more touches than everybody expects. I think the ball has to go somewhere in that offense. I don't think the wide receivers do as well this year. I think the Rams do as well. I just think there's going to be a redistribution, and I think it's the running back one with the Rams. So I still think it's Cam Akers, although a little concerned he already has a soft tissue injury, but so does Darrell Henderson. So don't know.
Kyron.
So, but if he's healthy,
Allen Robinson going to be making carries out that backfield.
If he's healthy, I think he has a top 10 season just because, they're gonna have to spread that ball around a little more this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it will.
And if Stafford has an arm issue, the easiest way to kind of take some of the pressure off the arm is make sure you're checking down a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you're doing shorter passes, right? Especially earlier in the season when the elbow could be an issue and they're trying to just nurse him through that. So, I see a lot of upside. It's a risk. But like I said, it's one of those, you're in that range. Like you get to number 7 to about 20. I think you can make a case for a lot of guys in that range to be as high as 7 or 8 or as low as 20.
Yeah, I agree there. And I think, as you said,
the dead zone.
Matthew Stafford is going to have to check it down a little more. Sean McVay is definitely going to be in his ear after his, extremely high interception season last year. He was trying to do too much at times, and I think that's something he's got to cut down on, which comes back down to checking it down to Cam Akers. He didn't really have Cam Akers last year, so he has Cam Akers this year. That should help with that.
Kyron Williams
could be a name that could come up if those two do miss time.
Yeah.
But Sean McVay
we'll find out week 3. We'll find out week 3.
Sean McVay likes to run his one running back into the ground till he gets hurt and then move on to the next guy.
Yeah, when Akers and Anderson are done.
If Cam Akers doesn't get hurt, I can definitely see him finishing in the top 10. It's just if he doesn't get hurt.
Right.
That's the main concern. And then one last running back, we're going to talk about a guy who made my top 10 at number 10. A guy who finished at the RB6 last year, who was the RB4 before he got hurt, and that is going to be Tom Brady's number 2 target in Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense.
Lenny.
Leonard Fournette.
Lenny.
This man is going to see
Lenny.
his targets again. 84 last year in 14 games. That number should go up after if he plays an entire season. Tom Brady's not going to stop checking the ball down. We all know that. His targets were great last year. He only had 3 games under 5 targets, and that's something I could see happening again. He was involved when it came down to the red zone, which is something I think happens again. Ronald Jones is gone. That's also a benefit to him as well. He was the most proven back in that backfield, and to me, he's more proven than White. And I think he probably was a bigger threat to Leonard Fournette's red zone touches than White will be. White could get some work out of the backfield as a receiving back, but those touchdowns are going to be there for Lenny. The receptions are going to be there for Lenny, and he's got the greatest quarterback of all time throwing him the ball, who's in the later stages of his career and has always loved to check it down to the running back. And we saw that connection last year. Whether he was, a little overweight before, he'll be good to go come the beginning of the season. Don't you guys worry. And I'm even nervous he's going to outperform my prediction of 10 because I think it's a real possibility he could finish top 5 again if he stays healthy. But that has been the case with every single one of these running backs. It feels like if he stays healthy, I feel like we said that,
he just alternates. He alternates too perfectly. Like go look at his PPR finishes. If we're just going most recent back 635, 749. So this is the off year, if we're just going off of the history. He had the good year last year. So this is the bad year. That's my analysis.
That is some great analysis there, Zach. We love that. But yeah, to me, I think he's going to be a great running back with a great quarterback who loves to check down the ball. So yeah, I expect a great season from him. He's 27, so he's older. Just signed his extension. He's a bigger guy. We'll see how it turns out, but I think he'll be a guy that definitely is riskier. But if you compare him with a solid RB1, I think that's a situation where I'm comfortable. Kind of at the beginning of drafts, if I have one of the first few picks, I like to go with Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey. And then if I go Christian McCaffrey, I like to follow him up with 2 other running backs because there's a chance that if I draft him, Leonard Fournette, and get, maybe I get a James Conner and Ezekiel Elliott as my 3rd running back, at least there's probably a pretty good chance that those guys are going to be healthy any given week. But that's definitely something you have to keep in mind when you're going after these guys that have those injury history. Make sure you do build the depth around it, accounting for them to miss games, because at the running back position, we all know very well that these guys will miss games when you don't want them to. At the most inopportune times, they will be missing games. But with that being said, that closes out our top 10. We ran, a little long this that Derrick Henry McCaffrey
2 episodes
situation kind of took out a little bit of time, but we'll be back again next week with our top 10 wide receivers. Hopefully that one, the last is a little shorter.
That'll be even longer.
3 hours.
We're doing 12 minutes a player.
Not even 12. Let's just go half an hour a player. We'll be here for a while. But I think we had a great show tonight. I hope you guys took all this information. Definitely make sure you listen to my rankings. Maybe ignore Jeff's Derrick Henry at 1.
Joe Mixon at RB34.
Yeah, but outside of all of that, I felt like it was a great show. I hope you guys learned a lot. And I want to thank you guys all for joining. Make sure you go check out Zach's merch. Make sure you go check out the media app, and you can check us out all on our socials, which I've been scrolling across the bottom of the screen throughout the show. And as I said, tune in next week, top 10 wide receivers. Probably just going to be as heated as it got today. Maybe more. Depends on who these guys have as their wide receiver 1. But we will see. We know Zach has Justin Jefferson. And I'm going to assume Will also has Justin Jefferson. So Jeff and I will really be the keys here to see who comes out as our wide receiver 1. Will it be Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson? I feel like that's the 2 ways it'll probably go. So tune in next week, and thank you guys for joining.
Yes, sir.
All right.